what the plan was, Commissioner Abel wanted to have a town hall meeting on the Morris Road Streetscape project. It's actually a streetscape enhancement project. And we did have a meeting, if you remember, that one very chilly night on the street. And we had another one at the Township building. And, challenges, we're using Zoom a lot, which I think with everybody who may have kids home and or have other items to take care of, this allows us to get everybody involved. So I want to thank Commissioner Abel, Township Manager Bill White's been involved, Dennis Capella from our staff is here, and the person who's going to be presenting this is Jamie Graham from Carroll Engineering. They've done the design on this project. And we also have John Rockwell Hosbach, the Township Arborist, who's not showing his face, but he has some, oh, there he is. He had some canned picture of him in a suit, which was a little funny. So what I'm going to ask everybody is, we'll mute our microphones during the presentation so Jamie can get through it and there's no background noise, sorry. And then we'll open it up to questions, comments, concerns, and we can step back through the slides as needed. So I'm going to mute and pass this on to Jamie. And we got to thank Ian Myers. He is our Zoom master. He's the guy that makes these meetings go. So a shout out to Ian.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like Steve said, my name is Jamie Graham. I work with Carroll Engineering. I've been doing traffic and highway engineering for 20 years. And I'm happy to present this project to you guys and to the township. Here's a quick agenda, what I'm going to scroll through on these slides. Do a quick introduction, just go over the scope. I know you guys are probably concerned a little bit about what construction is going to look like as far as your access for vehicles, for pedestrians. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the general schedule we have that we've laid out as far as finalizing the design, getting the bidding done, awarding the project and getting into construction. And then like Steve said, we're going to conclude with some questions and answers. Here's a list of the team for this project. Steve introduced himself. Dennis is the project manager. And John is the township arborist who handled the treescape portion of this project. I handled the infrastructure portion as well as just pulling the whole project together. You guys are probably aware of the scope. This project is along Morris Road from Devon Avenue down to Cedarbrook. There's two parts to it. There's infrastructure, there's trees, the treescape. As far as the infrastructure goes, we're looking to replace sidewalk from terminus to terminus on both sides of the road. We're looking to repair and replace all the driveway aprons. In conjunction with that, we're looking to replace all of the curbing along the corridor with full height curb. It's going to be granite curb. And then at each of the intersections where we have the curb ramps, the handicap ramps, we're going to be introducing a few new ones at Cedarbrook. And I'll show you a graphic in a few slides, just a representation of what it looks like. And we're adding some to Devon as well to kind of bring that intersection up to speed as far as the ramps and the crosswalks. In between the sidewalks and the curb, we're going to be putting new topsoil and grass for you. And last but definitely not least are the trees. And John will talk about that much more in depth in a few slides, taking away the declining tree, the cherry trees, and replacing them all along the corridor. I know that's important to everybody on this call and everybody along the corridor. There will also be some, here's a picture of a couple representative shots on Morris Road. And the one on the right, it does capture the speed hump in the middle of the road, and there will be repairs to that as well. Steve, if I'm getting anything out of order, or if there's anything you'd like to add, or Dennis, please feel free to chime in.
I do just want to add one item, Jamie. So the project is going to be based on granite curb, but in Jamie's calculations for estimated project costs, the granite curb is about a $200,000 plus line item. So our suggestion to the commissioners is we're going to bid this with granite curb, but we're going to have an alternate for concrete curb, which is the normal curb you see throughout the township in most places. We do have granite curb in a lot of places. So really that's going to come down to a funding issue, which will eventually be decided by the board. So I want to let folks know the intent is granite curb, but it conceivably could be concrete curb. So when the presentation's done, if you have strong feelings one way or the other, I definitely request that you let us know about that. Thank you.
Here are another couple shots, just highlighting the issues with the sidewalk, the cracking, the heaving next to where one of those big trees are. Just showing the need to get the sidewalk replaced, get it compliant, and get it ready to use for all you guys. This is just a snapshot of one of the driveways. I used my excellent graphics team to show just run a sidewalk and a new driveway apron, just with the full height curb as well. It should look good once it's done, getting all that stuff cleaned up. This is a shot of Devon and Morris, an existing shot showing curb ramps that have already been done with the orange detectable warning surfaces and the ramp down curb, the press curb, and we're going to be finishing out that intersection to get crosswalks on the other two legs and get those ramps up to speed as well. This is a shot of one of the existing curb ramps that we'll be replacing. This one is not up to design standards, so we redesigned that as part of this project. This is an overhead shot. We put in the curb ramps up here and on this leg, and then we're showing the crosswalks across all the approaches. Down at Cedarbrook at the other end, there's that island in the middle. We designed the project. I do have go back and forth with this one. Here's the island. We did add 3 dedicated pedestrian crossings with crosswalks, curb ramps. We put some curb ramps in the island as well for the pedestrian continuity. And there will also be pedestrian signage, like the little, it's the diamond shaped one with the pedestrian picture on it and the arrow pointing down, showing that this is a crosswalk for all these approaches. And this is that rendering. We're going to be having the full height curb and then having the ramps at grade and then ramp up. And then so there'll be access across this entire island. This tree is going to be removed and replaced as part of this project as well. With that being said, I'll hand it off to John. He can talk about the treescape portion of the project, and then we can go from there. Thanks.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. John Hospak here. Most of you know me. I was at the outside meeting and also the meeting at the Township building when we were in the discussion of the tree species. So, Jamie, I'm going to ask you to move ahead on the slides a little bit to the actual species. We're actually going to go backwards a little bit. Keep going. Keep going. Yep. So back, I think it was last fall, Steve, am I correct? Steve Oshini?
Yes,
Yep. So last fall is when we did the polling, correct, of the trees?
correct.
Yep. So we had numerous species that we were discussing. The species that we polled were the Zelkova, the Okami cherry, the Armor maple flame variety, the yellow wood, Japanese tree lilac, the Shumard oak, hornbeam, and the Armor macchia. They were the species. Yep. I didn't hear what you said.
You can close the computer. I can keep it like
Oh,
this.
there it is.
You can see?
Oh, these are the fences, these are the things they want to put.
Yep, they are the species of trees that we discussed. After polling everybody, the consensus was to go back with a monoculture of the flowering cherry, which is the Okami cherry, which is more resistant to the canker and diseases that currently exist today on the standard cherries. We had a total of 45 cherry trees along the corridor that will be removed and replaced with the Okami cherry. I think about a few months ago, 2 of them were already removed. So there's a total of 43 removals, and we're going to be replacing with 49 new small flowering Okami cherries.
Hey, John, it's Jake Abel.
Yep.
So you're proposing a monoculture when, this is going to go before Shade Tree, I assume, and they've recommended that we no longer plant monocultures along street lines.
Yeah.
So Jake, that is correct. And I
Right.
was very adamant about this when we were polling, that we were asking not for a monoculture, but
Yeah,
after polling everybody, they came back
Pretty-
with the Okami cherry decision. So, it has not been decided in full scale yet. However, this was something that was discussed numerous times with all the residents, and the consensus was to go back in with a cherry palette, just like we have today. Now, there's pros and cons of each. So with the Okami, species content and going in with a straight monoculture, they're more prone to epidemics such as the emerald ash borer. There's no level change in species height, color, or flowering capacity. And obviously you're going to have the one spring color of the Okami pink, early spring, that'll be consistent throughout the entire streetscape. The pros is a nice consistent look. People there that I talked to, and I must have spoken with probably 15 to 20 different people at both the meetings, and they both agreed that they would really like to go back in with a cherry look. So that's something we need to discuss. I'm not a fan of a monoculture. However, I understand the concerns of having that consistent look. The good news, though, in terms of monoculture with the Okami is they're very pest resistant. They do not get the actual canker or epidemic such as the canker that we're seeing today. They're pretty much disease and also insect resistant as of today.
And if I could add, so we will be appearing before Shade Tree at the September meeting. That would be John and myself to bring this issue forth. We'll take their input, their concern, any comment they have, and really it'll end up being a board decision then. So there's one of two ways this would go. Is what we discussed was it would either A, be this monoculture, or B, and we did give the residents the option to pick specific trees based on which side of the street they were on. So if you're on the side of the street with the overhead wires, the trees were limited in height. Whereas if you were on the side without the overhead wires, you could have trees of greater height. So you would have a diverse streetscape based on resident input, or as John said, the overwhelming wish was to go back to driving down or walking down the street and seeing the row of beautiful cherry trees, but these would be different cherry trees. So in the Commissioner, we'll be bringing this back to you and the manager to discuss, and perhaps the full board, if you wish, to figure out which way to go once we get Shade Tree's thoughts.
In a perfect world, I would like to see 4 different species, just because of the concerns. However, Okami cherries have been proven. They're planted a lot of times in a monoculture and a streetscape in park settings. And they have shown to be proven to be 100% resistant to both insects and diseases.
Okay. Yes. Thanks, John. I appreciate that context and insight. What you know, I think we got one shot at this, and you know, I don't want to be back. I don't want to be back in 10 or 15 years with the same issue with the trees because we didn't have the long-term vision to take a couple of different variety of species and plant them and continue to go back with the monoculture. But if you're telling me that they've shown and proven to be resistant, and that 15 years from now we're going to have that, we're still going to have that same beautiful streetscape, you know, I'll get on board with the neighbors and support it.
Correct. You know, and again, Jake, you know, we're looking at a total of 49 trees to be replaced. I mean, if we were in the 100 to 150 replacements, I would definitely be curtailing around the monoculture and going straight to a diverse palette. I think we can pull this off with the Okami cherry. Everybody that I spoke with was very adamant about having that cherry look. But again, we'll be bringing this in front of the shade tree, as Steve pointed out. And I would, you know, the goal, obviously, if we're not going to go with the monoculture, is to get some different flowering capacity, such as using the yellow wood, using more fastigiate, such as the Zelkova, to get you that broad range. But as Steve pointed out, we do have a utility interface, which is going to really limit the species character on, I guess it would be the north side of the street.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Jamie, you can go back to the slide with the decay. Yep, so this is what we're seeing throughout the corridor of Mars Road. We're seeing decline. Some trees are showing it in the upper canopy, dieback, necrosis, and both the canker. We are also looking at a lot of infrastructure damage, such as lifting roots, the actual decay in the root system, and also the main concern is the longevity of the species that are there. Go to the next slide. So you can see the basidiomites, which are the decay fungus on the right-hand side. We're seeing a lot of that prevalent throughout the entire streetscape. And then we have old wounds and car damage where you can see the, you know, the decay and the fold on the actual scaffold branches. So we anticipated longevity-wise that these trees have, at the greatest extent, another 5 to 6 years before the entire alley of cherry trees is failing, you know, with an error rating of 5%, obviously, to about 90%. So about 90% of the trees will be failing in full within 5 years. Questions?
So what I'd like to do, if nobody has questions for John, I think he's laid it out pretty well. We've discussed the monoculture versus the multiculture. So Jamie had mentioned, you know, people are going to have concerns about how they're going to get in and out of their driveways and how we're going to do this project. And they are all valid concerns. So we're going to have to write this project specifically to note that, you know, this has to be done in some section. We can't close driveways and sidewalks on both sides of the street. I do want to warn everybody, though, at one point in time, when your driveway apron and that piece of sidewalk that goes across your driveway is installed, there will be a few days that you will have to stay off of that. And I can let Jamie get in the specifics of that. So it's going to be on us to make sure that this is done in sections so we're not devastating the whole street at one time, and that people have room to park on street. Because if we did everything at once, then, you know, not everybody could park. It would be a rough issue. So I'm going to let Jamie kind of step into that again.
Hey, Steve, this is Dave Lorraine from 381. Could I go back to the trees?
Yes, sir.
Hi, so this is Dave Lorene. I'm from 381 Morris. My wife Barb Light's here with me. We're not tree experts, but we've had the experience with a tree in our backyard where we've had tree surgeons, arborists tell us that, it'd be dead in a couple of years, and we're looking at it perfectly healthy 10 years later. So I'm a little bit skeptical whenever somebody tells me a living thing's going to die. And I kind of wonder why we might not just replace what's dying. Again, I'm not an expert, but the idea of pulling these out, I thought it was a great idea when we got together on the street because of all the other things. But, having seen them flower brilliantly again in the spring, I really hate to see them go. I guess the only other things I'll add is I like the monoculture idea. And then the last thing, and I'll let other people comment, is we had also talked about cobblestone curbing. I understand the cost problem, but it feels like that's gone now. I hadn't heard about that. And now we're talking about concrete, which, seems to me over 10 years starts to crack and so forth, just doesn't seem all that great. So those are my comments.
So I'll jump in on the curb part, and then I'll switch to John for the trees. So early on, cobblestone was one of the recommendations, but that was also removed out of the running for a couple of reasons. Not only is the expense even higher than the granite curb, but it's not a standard look in Radnor Township. So there was a period of time that granite curb was the specified curb in Radnor. So you can see that in a lot of neighborhoods. There was also a period of time where concrete, actually two variations of the concrete curb were specified. So it was decided that we wanted to stick with what is or was a standard in Radnor Township. Actually, the current standard is the concrete curb, but the commissioner thought that, the granite curb would look great, and I agree. Granite curb is beautiful, but the Belgian block fell out rather early, basically because of two items. It's not a standard curb on a public street in Radnor, and its cost is even greater than that of the granite. So like I say, we're going to bid the project with the granite. We're going to have an alternate for the concrete, which lets us say, okay, we can do one or the other. We're going to bring that to, when we bid this, we're going to bring that to the Board of Commissioners. And at that time, it'll be decided which way we can award. I'll switch to John for the trees.
Yep. Jamie, can you go back to the two pictures of the two dead trees? Keep going back. There we go. So to answer your question, sir, very valid questions. I do not know the tree behind your home. However, I feel that a lot of arborists and tree guys that are in the business of actually removing trees or pruning trees always opt to tell the client to get that sale that their tree is going to die. However, I do not do tree removals. We only provide the consultations and the scientific backup. So those two trees that are in the screen right now were alive in 2018. And you can see the progression of the canker and necrosis, which is, culling a lot of these trees throughout the streetscape. And we're starting to see a decline. I've been watching these trees probably since Steve started talking to me about this project in 2018. Or even I think there was also a stormwater management or a sewer project over there at one point that was discussed. I could be wrong. But anyways, we have been reviewing these trees and we have been watching the progression of decline over the last few years. And it's only going to continue to be worse. That's why my forecast of 5 years should be right on the money, give or take a little bit of an error. But again, we're watching the decline and we're seeing a lot more decline this year than we had last year on a lot of these trees. And the prolific flowering that you saw this year also, I know it's hard to understand this, could also be a contributor to the actual stress of the tree. Trees sometimes, when they're stressed or in decline, will proceed to put out a very heavy, prolific flowering capacity. So it's very common, especially with cherry trees.
All right. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Back to the construction and the stuff Steve was talking about, how you guys are going to be impacted. These images in front of you, these are they're called PATAs. These are Pennsylvania typical applications that PennDOT has for standard applications of different working environments. This is a flagging operation for Devon Avenue, for any of that work. And these will be used at the discretion of the contractor. And we're going to weave into the contract documents, into the plans and the specs about keeping access open to the driveways as much as possible, not closing down both sides of the street, allowing traffic to move at all times. So if they're going to work on one side of the street, they can't work on the other, because we're not going to close this road and detour anything. We're going to keep it open, keep access open to everybody's houses, and do what we can to minimize the stress on your daily lives. This PATA, this application is just a sidewalk diversion. When a piece of sidewalk is going to be constructed, there will be an application of some traffic control, just to make sure that it's apparent to a pedestrian walking on the sidewalk how to get around safely and back to that pedestrian path. Because that's the most important thing during construction, is to keep everybody safe and keep everybody happy as far as mobility and access to their residences. With that being said, I'll move on to the schedule. This is generally what we laid out, the town halls today. There are a couple meetings coming up on the 16th and the 21st, where decisions are going to be made on the trees and ultimately moving forward on this project. The goal right now is to advertise at the end of this month, get bids awarded a month after that, have construction begin in December, and then have the infrastructure complete. I mean, it's because we're starting construction, at least we're targeting to start construction in the middle of winter. We allowed some extra time, anticipating some shutdowns due to weather, but have the infrastructure, the sidewalk, the curbing, the ramps, all that stuff done by the end of March. And just to give a little bit more time into the spring to get those trees planted along the corridor and get the project wrapped up. That is all I had. We've already answered some questions, but please feel free to ask any questions to any of us, and we'll do what we can to answer them.
Hi, this is Shelley Finistor from 346 Morris Road. Hope everybody's doing well. One question I really quick have in terms of the time frame when each section is to be completed or started, will the neighbors be informed so that we can plan appropriately as to where we will be able to park? We're one of those streets that have some short driveways. We're one of them that has a short driveway and have to park 2 cars on the street. Will there be a time when we will be informed as to when our section will be started and finished?
Yeah, yes, Ms. Shelley, that's correct. So we haven't gotten down to the brass tacks on this, but what we've been discussing is requiring the contractor to do this in sections, like maybe 25% of the project at one point in time. So most likely you're going to get a general notification that we're going to be working in front of your house this week or these 2 weeks, but we'll also have to have some type of notification requirement for when. I remember I said when they put forms up, so the day they install forms and or pour concrete, you're out of your driveway for several days. You can't get over it. So we'll have to have some more specific on that. We haven't worked it out. It is a very long linear project. So we're going to look at map this out, and we may get as specific as saying, you know, we've broken this down into X sections, the contractor can work in no more than, say, I'll make up a number, 2 sections at one time. They can't be across from each other, something along those lines, but you will get notification. There's no doubt.
Yeah, because I know that quite a number of us on the street have already been frustrated with Miller Brothers and Pico working, that we are being blocked sometimes at both ends and we can't get off the street. And we're having a lot of difficulty with that. So we just want to make sure that, I know you guys are really doing your best with trying to make sure we're getting on and off properly and that we're going to be able to park where we can.
Well, one thing, let me talk about the Millers Brothers project. So if you encounter that, please contact the township, because everybody understands there's going to be times when you are going to be stalled, so to speak, for a couple of minutes. But it should never be to the point that, you're stuck for 15 minutes, that you can't, get out of your street or something like that, unless they're right in front of your house. But if you do encounter that, just call the township and extension 155, and they'll address that. Somebody will go out and see what's going on. So please, I want everybody on the call to understand that.
Yeah, if I could jump in real quick, this is Bill White, Township Manager. I appreciate everyone's time tonight. Steve, if we could, let's be proactive on this and reach out to Bill Miller and his crew tomorrow, just echoing, the issue. And hopefully they'll address it immediately and we won't have to put people in a position of having to make that call. It's always an option if Bill Miller does block the road, but we can move on that right now.
Will do.
Thank you very much.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Yes, who are we speaking to?
So this is Barb Light. I'm Dave Lorene's wife at 381 Morris Road. And I was always, and this is really for the arborist out of curiosity, that the best time of year to plant trees is usually the fall. And so if you're going to do it in the spring, does that potentially put us at risk of losing new trees?
So that is an excellent question. Yep, that's an excellent question. So some of the species, depending on what we choose for the final, if it's not the monoculture and we use a diverse palette, some of them are what's called a fall hazard, meaning they cannot be planted in the fall because they cannot be dug in the nursery. So they do have to be planted. With the cherry trees, they can be both planted in the spring and also the fall. So that's the only, another positive to the monoculture of the Okami cherries. Depending on the species palette that we choose from the selections we gave you, that'll decide when we plant, obviously.
Okay.
If I could,
and then just out of here.
so just
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Point, when the township does a project like this, our trees are warranted for a period of 1 year. So there's watering requirements, and our arborists will be there to check stock and how they're planted. But in the end, the contractor is on the hook for 1 year for the trees. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. This is really, out of curiosity, have any of you ever driven down our street in April when all the cherries bloom?
I have indeed, yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just think if you have, you understand why the neighborhood would love to see it continue. That's all. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Hey, this is Dave. I'll just chime in real quickly here because I got to speak already. I just wanted to speak in favor of the monoculture for the reasons that Barb was saying. How the trees look in the spring, it's just important to me. In favor of the monoculture, I'd say that my neighbors who've been here for more than 50 years tell me that that's about how old these trees are. So, maybe that tells us that monoculture will work out all right, in addition to what John had told us. I'm wondering how to get a Zoom invite to the Shade Tree Commission meeting. And then the last thing is, I wanted to be sure I understood correctly that the aprons were to be concrete, and I'll just mute myself now.
So yeah, the aprons, so the curb is, the primary design for the curb is granite. The aprons and sidewalk will all be concrete. The aprons will be thicker with welded wire fabric. and the sidewalks are plain cement concrete. As far as the Shade Tree Commission, the way these our public meetings work, so the Shade Tree Commission will be on Zoom. You as a resident can view it live on YouTube, and your way to comment will be to send an email, and that email will go to, again, through our Zoom master Ian. Those emails will go to the chair of the Shade Tree Commission and myself, and periodically through the meeting, you know, on each topic, we're checking our emails to make sure. So you'll be able to attend the meeting, so to speak, by viewing it live on YouTube, and your interaction will be via email and responded to live.
And this is John again. Just some facts. I did find some notes from our polling meeting. They're handwritten, but I believe that 98% of the votes that came back were in favor of the Okami cherry monoculture. And the other high-ranking tree was yellowwood.
Hi, this is Sarah Pugh. I'm at 362. I was just wondering, I'm actually viewing this Zoom call on my phone. So will this slide deck be available for us to view sort of in a better, I guess, method, or so that, I mean, because what's most important to me is the timeline. So I just want to make sure that I'm aware of what it is. And it's just that I'm not going to remember past December, so.
Sure. The township manager, we just had a Zoom meeting. Bill White, he was just talking a minute ago. So the township manager wanted to make sure that, yes, this meeting is recorded, and we will post it for folks to view. And on the schedule, you'll see, I just want to reiterate what Jamie had noted. So this is a late fall project.
Yes.
And the fact that we're dealing with concrete and things that are weather dependent, we have a spring finish time on this, because if we get a winter like we normally do, not like last year or the year before, construction would really be slowed down. So we're anticipating that. We're hoping to be done sooner, but we're also being realistic.
And we would be notified about the delayed timeline. Is that the case?
Not so much notified about the delayed timeline. We're showing you what the schedule is, right?
Yes.
So we're saying, okay, infrastructure, that's sidewalk and curb, we're basing it that's going to be done March 31st. That is the delayed timeline, the March 31st. You'll be informed of construction once it starts. Now, if at one point, you know, we hit a stretch of weather that's sub-freezing for several weeks, you're not going to see any work take place. There's no notification to that point, but there's also no notification that we're blocking your driveway, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, but Steve, hey, it's
understand.
Jake. Steve, hey, it's Jake. I will, I mean, if I'm aware of any notices of a week or two, the workers being delayed, I will relay all that information to the residents, just so they have a heads up. In addition, you know, I would like, if this passes the board and this goes forward, I would request, similar to what we did at the Philip Pone Park entrance, to have some type of billboard outlining the project, describing it, so residents will always have that as a visual, and then people coming through the area know that the trees are not going away. They're coming back, and they will be around for decades to come.
And I guess my question is that, can we just, as people, as, you know, residents of that street, be a little bit more informed in terms of timelines? Because the last we knew, according to, you know, the block, you know, the meeting that we had on our street, this should have been close to done by now. So that's why, and now we're coming back and it's saying like, oh, well, now it's going spring. So that's what I mean by it would just be helpful for us to be a little bit better informed, considering that this summer has been quite disruptive in terms of all the construction being done. And we have no idea even when it's going to be finished, just in terms of the Miller brothers. I mean, it's been going on for months now. So it's just that we'd like to be updated a little bit.
You're spot on. There's no doubt. So from what Mr. White and Commissioner Abel had said, we will make sure that information is out there, whether it be from the contractor that he or she will be required to do, or for the township, like let's say, the project basically ceases for a few weeks or longer in the middle of the winter, we'll make sure that gets out there. I can tell you anecdotally, Miller Brothers feels they will be off the street by late October. And if all goes well, fortunately or unfortunately, we would follow that with this project.
No, I appreciate that. And that's good to know, actually. So we have another month and a half of the Miller Brothers. So thank you, though.
I just want to add for Ms. Lorene, so the Shade Tree meeting is on Wednesday, September 16th at 6:30. So you'll be able to come on our website and, as I said, view it on YouTube. I just want to make sure you can mark that in your calendar to be available for that. So any public input, any folks from the street that wish to have input, please do that night.
Thank you, Steve.
So does anybody else have any other questions, any comments, concerns? If something pops up, like you're like, darn, I should have asked that, please feel free to email me, snorsini@radnor.org. I think a bunch of you folks should hopefully have my card from previous meetings. And I'll make sure that those questions get to our design consultant or our arborist, and we'll get an answer to you in short order. If there are no questions, I want to thank all our residents for taking time out of their day. And as you had noted, these are these are unprecedented times, and everybody's schedule is quite wonky. So we appreciate your taking the time to be with us and go through this. I want to thank Commissioner Jake Abel for convening the town hall meeting, Township Manager Bill White for being here and providing input on this project through, as well as John Hosbach, the arborist, and Dennis Capella, our project manager. So I want to thank everybody, but mostly I want to thank our residents.
Steve, real quick question for you again. This is Shelley Finistor at 346 again. Remind me, please, what was the extension to call if we encounter any other issues with Miller's Brothers?
Well, call extension 155, but I'll be shooting out an email tonight to say, we're having some issues. Now, one of the reasons is I believe they're trying to put more people on the job to get out of there so that they don't interfere with our project. Right? So they've been taking a while, and I said, you guys got to get moving. So that might be part of the problem. That just started this week. But I'm going to put something out, but if anything specific occurs, just contact that. It's extension 155. Public Works handles the day-to-day issues with Miller Brothers. I will go out there. You feel free to email me, and I will address them right away, and we'll get that straightened out. I mean, everybody understands that if they're digging right in front of your driveway, that's an issue, but they should be coming to your door and saying, hey, in a couple of hours, we're going to have a big trench opened up in front of your driveway. Now would be the time to move your car. If that kind of stuff isn't happening, we need to know that, and I will be all over Miller Brothers.
Sometimes they will do it and sometimes they won't because they can't find the owner of specific cars. I mean, they know my car because I've had to move it several times already. But yeah, they don't come to us generally and say, okay, we're going to be right in front of you, here's where we are. But they just block off areas. But I appreciate that, Steve. Thank you.
I will address that with them for sure. So does anybody else have any other questions, comments, concerns? Shade Tree Commission, September 16th, 6:30 via YouTube. Email in your comments. Again, thanks to the commissioner, the manager, John Hosbach, Dennis Capella, and most thanks to you folks for tuning in, so to speak, to your probably 1000th Zoom meeting of the pandemic. And to Jamie Graham for a great presentation and a great design he's doing on this project. So thank you, everybody, and I guess we'll be signing off, and we will make sure that you are informed either directly through the township, the commissioner, or both. So have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.